What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast, a video game show. I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well. How are you this fine evening?
This is the latest we've ever recorded.
Yeah, it's 8:30 p.m.
formally.
We just wrapped up our third installment of Team Chat Plays for the month of July because we got on a tear streaming through Bramble the Mountain King. It's a short game. It's like 4.5 hours, maybe 5.
So, and because Jared had already played it, so he was having me replay it and him sort of backseat game, but not really. He only helped me when I asked for it.
I was here for the experience.
Co-pilot, if you will, not backseat gaming. And we usually when we only stream once a month, why are you going to drag out a 4-hour game over the course of...
a multiplayer game. So the only time we did it, we learned from Guacamelee 2.
Now we got to really step it up.
That took years of time.
To beat.
I was like, we're not doing that with this game. It's a quick one.
Yeah.
We wanted to play through it.
I wanted to finish it. I really just wanted to get through it. Not get through it in a bad way, but I was invested. I wanted to see it through.
So we played through that, and now we just wrapped up our stream, and we thought, hey, it's not super late.
It's fresh on our minds.
It's fresh on our brains. Let's record a review. So that's what we're bringing for you this week. But before we get to that, where can you listen? You found us this episode, so I'm assuming you know where to find us. But in case you don't, you can find new episodes of Team Chat Podcast around the World Wide Web on podcast services, as well as over on our YouTube channel. Links for all that are in the description below. Where you can find us on social media at Facebook, Threads, and Instagram. We also have a Discord server where you can join there, have a lot of great conversation with us when we're not here recording the show. And also, if you want to help make the show bigger and better, help keep these lights on, give us more games to play, all that good fun
These
stuff.
These require electricity, This is
and
free.
That costs money, and especially in this economy, god damn it. But you can head over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you could support the show. And in return, we'll give you cool perks like getting the episodes early before their general Thursday release and access to a private channel on our Discord server, the Rogues Gallery. And there are a lot of cool people who have done that. They've gone over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, and they are Ark, Brandon W., Bro Mogan, Super Saiyan Ace, Erica L., Elise F., James K., Michael B., Michael S., Snooty Boots, Susan M., and Zach S. Thank you all for each and every one of you for your contributions over on Patreon. And if you can't support us over on Patreon, that is absolutely no big deal at all. There are lots of free ways that you can help support the show, such as telling your friends, writing us a review, or subscribing. Turn on that little bell notification on YouTube, all that fun stuff. Wherever you listen to or watch the show, that helps us out, helps get the good word of Team Chat Podcast out there to the masses. And for that, we are eternally grateful and love each and every one of our viewers, listeners, and patrons alike. Bam.
Heart emoji.
Smooches,
XOXO.
All right, before we get into the main topic of the day, let's get a little bit of news and what's coming out soon in our Moment with Mogan.
All right, we are going to backtrack just a little because a couple of things came out while we were busy streaming that actually you and I kind of care about. At least they've been part of our more recent conversations about games. Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn.
Yeah.
This game's already out, which seems insane. So Flintlock, The Siege of Dawn is out now for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Nintendo World Championships NES Edition is out for the Switch now. And there was another one that this weird game that I can't decide if I think looks awesome or if I think I would hate it. Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess.
I haven't seen this at all.
Oh, you would recognize the trailer.
Oh, okay.
You just don't recognize the name, but if you saw the trailer, you'd be like, oh yeah, that weird game. So Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess is also out now for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. And then coming soon, today is, out now. I missed one. The new Denpa Men. I thought this game looked so weird, but I think some people are actually kind of hyped for it, so I thought I should mention it anyways. Is out now exclusively for the Switch. And then now are we at the coming soon? Maybe towards the end of the month. I gotta kind of keep scrolling. Actually, that might be everything. Well, I'll just get through these last few just to close out the rest of the month. So, Arranger, a role-puzzling adventure, is out for PS5, Switch, PC, and Mac. Earth Defense Force 6 is out for PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and PC. Kingdom Rush 5 Alliance is out for PC, iOS, and Android. There's your mobile game for the month.
Nice.
Thrasher is out for the Quest 3, Quest 2, and PC. Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus is out for the Switch now. And rounding out the very end of the month, we've got One Piece Odyssey for the Switch. Lots of other things will be coming out as of August, but we will get to those next time.
Very cool, very cool.
Mostly the Flintlock one was the one that I wanted to circle back to, because I feel like you were kind of interested in that.
I was excited to check that one out. I do believe it might have a demo, maybe. You also remember I saw that I believe it was this last weekend, that game that was at, I guess it had to have been the Sony State of Play, Concord. It was like the new hero shooter and stuff. It had its open beta this weekend, and apparently it did not do great. Did not have very big numbers, apparently.
Okay. So I wasn't sure. I gathered, I obviously didn't really pay that much attention to the news, but I gathered that some of the reactions were less than enthusiastic. I couldn't tell if it was like server issues or if it was just that people weren't enthused about the game.
That's kind of what I got the hint that it more was, a little bit not enthused. But another quick little story that we did want to talk about that does have us enthused.
Yeah, something to be enthused about.
PC Gamer is where we're getting this news from 3 days ago on July 19th, 2024. Bethesda Game Studios developers form, quote, wall-to-wall union that includes artists, designers, and programmers.
Round of applause.
Love to see it. Love to see it. Finally getting some unions up in here, up in the video game industry, which is high time.
The gaming industry desperately needs to unionize. Those people are overworked, underpaid, and in terrible danger of just being
burning out.
Yeah, of just being burnt out, burnt to crispy shreds.
So the article says developers of Bethesda Game Studios have elected to unionize with the Communications Worker of America, a national labor organization that has also worked with Activision Blizzard employees on collective bargaining efforts. Unlike some game industry unions whose membership is isolated to QA departments, ZeniMax QA workers unionized last year, for instance. This is a wall-to-wall union, says the CWA, and was formed by votes from 241, quote, artists, engineers, programmers, and designers, end quote, across 3 offices. It's the first of its kind at a Microsoft-owned studio. So obviously, I'm wondering if this was spurred. This is not the article. This is me talking now. If this was spurred on from obviously the big layoffs that just affected and studio closures that just affected Bethesda. So they were probably like, you know what? It's time to right this ship. Maybe.
Yeah, gosh.
But then let's see. In the run up to Microsoft's other huge recent acquisition, its purchase of Activision Blizzard, the tech giant strategically positioned itself as union friendly. In this instance, the Bethesda unionization, it doesn't appear to have put up a fight. The CWA says that Microsoft has already recognized the union. So the next step will be for Microsoft and the union members to agree on a contract, which may or may not go as smoothly. So still some work and stuff to be done, but hey, the first steps have been laid. Microsoft has recognized it, which is great in and of itself as well. And hopefully the rest of the negotiations will pan out the way they should.
We wish them the absolute best in their collective bargaining agenda.
Yep. Good thing to see. It's nice to get some good positive industry news lately, you know?
Rare.
A little rare as of late.
Yeah, rare
and
good
it's
news.
a good high point, a good thing to see. But with that though, let's talk about Bramble.
Let's get poked
by some needles.
Oh, God. I'm not sure we should phrase it that way. That just makes me think we're going to the doctor to get, like, flu shots.
Well, you know, if you haven't got your flu shot, you probably get your flu shot. Not till October, though, everybody.
The flu is a myth. You don't need vaccines.
No.
Don't do that. I'm just kidding. Do get your vaccines.
Get your boosters, everybody.
I remember do you remember swine flu?
Yes.
Back when people thought there were other illnesses to worry about 1,000 years ago. I remember, like, I was probably in my young 20s, and I was back home over a holiday break from school, and my mom, like, made me go get a swine flu shot, and I was like, oh, gosh, this is the stupidest thing ever. This is so dumb. Like, I didn't really put up a fight about it. I was just like, God, why?
Why do I have to deal with this? This is a hassle in my day.
This was back in the day when I thought that the flu didn't actually kill anyone. It does. The flu does still kill people. Yes. so
That's why
take those seriously.
Get your vaccinations. But anyway.
In other news, we're actually talking about Bramble.
So Bramble, the Mountain King, was an independent game released by Dimfrost Studios last year, I believe in August.
Yeah, it was so much newer than I thought it was
Yeah.
going to be. When you told me the date, because when I first started playing it, I knew basically nothing about this game until Jerrett played it. So I was thinking like 2018, 2019, just based on what I saw, but boy, that was not correct.
2023. So actually, this game also, remember a couple episodes back, Mogan did a review on the Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express game. This game, which was given to us by Kurok, this game also was a gift from Kurok in the same care package that he sent us. So we felt like we wanted to play it, give it a nice little review and all that stuff. And so here we go. But yeah, it was released by Dimfrost last year, and it follows or is heavily inspired by Nordic folklore because the developer is from Sweden.
Yes, so the developers were from Sweden, and I think it's interesting in the sort of development notes from their Wikipedia page. They do mention that Dimfrost's original idea for the game had to do with Vikings, but they found the idea overplayed, which
I agree.
I totally have to agree with them on this. If the game had just been Viking flavored, I don't think I would have cared at all.
Well, because we had gotten so many, like after God of War,
Yeah.
the 2018 one came out, everybody was like, we need Viking games.
Yeah.
And so we had so many. There was like Northgard,
Assassin's
Valheim,
Creed.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the God of War Valhalla DLC, which came out December of last year.
Oh, yeah.
So that would have been another Viking game like right around the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably a good idea to change it and to have a little bit of a different feel.
Yeah, so instead they switched gears and decided to pull from cautionary fables for children. So basically, like,
Is that a book?
No,
Is that the book title? Cautionary Tales
like,
for children.
Sort of like the Swedish equivalent of Aesop's fables, because those old
Yeah.
Americanized and even sort of like UK fables for children. Most of those are actually really messed up. Like when you actually go back and read them, you're like, oh my God, this stuff is fucked up.
Yeah.
And I guess that in Sweden, all of their children's cautionary fables are just as fucked up because this game is messed up.
It is. Like I was playing it, and it throws you off. You don't think it's going to take this horrible, terrible turn, but it does. Because the game's art style really looks like it's a children's storybook. Like it's in 3D, and most of the time the game does kind of take an isometric look down on the world, but the camera does move. You don't control the camera.
Yeah.
The camera moves throughout the linear levels and everything that you play.
In that way, there were certain points of the game, especially since it has horror elements, where I was really thinking that it harkens back to the old Resident Evil games that had the fixed camera.
Mm-hmm. It does kind of feel like that. But the first 40 minutes, would you say 30 to 40 minutes
Are pretty chill.
pretty chill.
Yeah.
Like you're just kind of like you're exploring this forest. You play as Ole, a young boy who discovers that his sister Lillimore is gone from their room in the middle of the night. It doesn't give you a time period, but it's folklore, so it's in the way back when.
You would guess that it's probably 1600s,
Yeah,
maybe?
probably around that time.
It seems like definitely older than Victorian.
Yeah.
Maybe like Elizabethan era.
Probably
I'm not
around
sure.
there.
Somewhere along that lines.
And so Ole goes to look for Lillimore. Finds Lillimore, and you're like, well, this isn't too bad. And it's just in a nice little forest. They find this weird stone.
A moonstone.
A moonstone, which kind of has moon gravity. They play catch
Yeah.
with it. And they're playing around with it on top of this tower. And then, as things do, they lose the stone. It rolls down out of the tower. They both tumble after it. And then they're suddenly transported into more of a magical forest. And it's
Yeah.
is it going through the tower, do you think that activated it, or playing with the moonstone? That part, I'm not quite sure what actually puts them into this world.
I think thematically and from sort of the story beats that the game takes, and we are going to be talking about the full story of the game because it's
It's
so
a 4.5
short.
hour game.
We're going to have to.
If we
give
talked
it a
about the
proper
mechanics
review.
of it,
We'd be done
we'd
in
be
that
done in
much
2
time.
seconds.
Yeah,
So,
we'd be done in
we're
2
gonna
seconds.
be rehashing the story a little bit here.
So I think
throughout.
the tower is sort of the catalyst or even the portal that takes them from world to world because
Mm-hmm.
even towards, well, we'll get to the end of the game, but even at the end of the game, it serves that purpose again. And Ole comes back to the tower multiple times
Yeah.
throughout your playing the story because when they go through the tower the first time and they sort of fall off the edge after the moonstone, they become tiny.
Mm-hmm.
So they get transported more or less to what we would consider to be like the fairy realm, because in Nordic mythology, I guess, a lot of the sort of fey creatures like gnomes and trolls and stuff have a lot of overlap with a lot of other westernized fables, which obviously we all borrowed from the Europe anyway. So there's a lot of overlap. So they get into the fairy realm and they're teeny tiny, and first everything is fine. They're running through fields of giant flowers, and then they find these little like classic gnome people.
Tall pointy red hats.
Classic, like the tall pointy red hat. They've got
cloaks.
Blue cloaks. They're little baby gnomes, and then there's also Grandpa Gnome, and he has like a big, they don't talk, but they have like, a big white beard, and they're very jovial. So the first few things of you playing through the game are mostly to get you familiar with the controls, but also to introduce you to what you think is a magical, friendly world for you and your sister to explore.
Wrong.
And you definitely get the sense from those first few beats that Ole is not the leader. First of all, he's the younger brother. He's, I would guess, 6 to 8.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm a terrible judge of children's ages, but I would assume he's around that age.
Because Lillimore looks like 11, 12.
Like 10, 12. So Lillimore's a little bit older than Ole, and she's very like adventurous. You can, again, none of them ever talk, but you can tell that Lillimore is very adventurous. She's not afraid of going out and exploring the forest in the night at all. So she's sort of leading the way, and Ole's just like, well, okay, this won't be so bad because he has Lillimore.
Right. It's not how things go. So the very first time I'm playing this, because like Mogan said, I played it before she did, and then so I'm playing it, I'm like, well, this isn't too bad. Honestly, it was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to keep going with this, because it just, at the beginning part, and you can attest to this, it's pretty easy.
Oh, yeah.
You're just walking along these predetermined paths. There's not like a lot of extra exploration to do, really, and that's true throughout the whole game. But so you're just kind of walking through and nothing's happening. And I knew that, like,
you play hide and seek with the gnomes?
Yeah, you play hide and seek with the gnomes and some other stuff. But I had seen like clips online, and so that I kind of made me think that, oh, maybe something else happened. So I stuck with it. But I'm glad I did, because after you finish playing hide and seek with the gnomes, things go south. Lillimore gets captured by a huge troll, and then that said troll proceeds to go on a rampage against the gnomes. There's a part where you're trying to get them to safety, and you get them into a house, and you're like, oh, thank God, I saved all these gnomes. And then the troll comes out of nowhere and just stomps the house and all the gnomes. You hear their cries, and it's just horrifying. And
then like the house catches on fire. Like it's the whole shebang.
Ole's just sitting behind this rock, just sobbing, holding his head in his hands, like, oh my God.
Ole starts having a rough time fast.
In my gameplay, what really tipped me off to this game just took a turn into what the fuck territory is I stepped on a bear trap, and it just like very graphically snaps shut and cuts Ole in half. And I'm like, he's a child.
Because remember,
what is happening?
You're tiny, so when you step into the bear trap, it's the size of Ole, it just clamps it. Now, it never happened to me.
No, she somehow avoided all of them. I have no idea how you did that.
I didn't even see them.
Yeah.
Like I was just blazing through the game.
And I was just sitting back here going like, she's going to step on one. She's going to step on one. And she never did. So, just kind of bummed me out there.
Oh, boy. I'm just too good of a pro gamer.
From then on out, the goal of the game obviously becomes, oh, we got to get Lillimore back.
Yeah, you got to get your sister back.
And you just proceed to travel into deeper and darker and more disturbing horrors.
Yes.
There are boss fights that you eventually will come to along the way. Like the very first one, the Butcher, which was your first very big
That was the first
death.
time I died. That was the first time I died, period.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, oops.
And it gave you the hint of, oh, this is how terrible and nasty this game's going to be. Well, because before you even fight the Butcher, you're like crawling through like buckets and just loads of guts.
It's so gross.
Blood.
And the sound
effects are disgusting.
The audio design in this game is like, if you're really sensitive to that kind of stuff, maybe turn the volume down a little bit.
That is true. I guess we should actually say
gross.
This game too, as just another little warning.
Yeah.
This game too also has like a content warning, a trigger warning almost at the beginning, being like, there's a lot of violence against children, infanticide,
some of it is very
suicide.
justified. Yeah.
Like they were like, heads up, this game goes places. And it goes places. It goes places. But as far as like the actual gameplay of it, you then go throughout all these areas. You will come across, the majority of it really is like some environmental like platforming, pretty basic though.
Yeah, pretty, like you climb stuff every now and then. You sometimes jump from platform to platform.
Yeah.
Most of Ole's combat, though, at least when it comes to the environmental portions of the game, involve him largely running from cover to cover.
Right.
Because everything in the game is
Everything.
a one-hit instant kill. Ole has no health.
Yeah.
So as soon as something hits you, you are 100% dead. So, and you, other than your moonstone, which at a certain point in the game, I think you actually don't have.
Yeah, you lose it. I think around the middle of the game you lose it.
So other than your moonstone, which can occasionally protect you and can kind of do damage to certain bosses, but it can't really help you out of environmental situations.
Right.
So if you don't have that with you, you just have to duck and cover.
And it's a lot of that. And so the gameplay actually also really reminded me a whole lot, and even the kind of the look at it and how like the camera operates and different stuff like that, a little bit of like Limbo and Inside.
Yes.
In terms of like the environmental puzzles and the challenges you did have to
Definitely.
figure out, kind of felt more in line with that game. And honestly too, even like the violence of it, it kind of matches like Limbo is pretty graphic too.
Yeah, it does.
Not as graphic. Bramble definitely takes the cake there, but you know, it's it's a trip. That's all I can really say.
I mean,
because I got to that part and I was just like immediately when my first playthrough, it got to the butcher, the bear traps, and just really showed, oh, this is where this game is going to go, and it's not going to pull punches in terms of like how gruesome and horrifying it's going to be. I mean, it was like, well, I'm sold, and Mogan has to play this, and I need to see her play it on stream because I want to be there for all these moments when it just like all this craziness starts happening. And
So
man,
I
there are
think-
some good ones.
Yeah, I think I hadn't died at all when I got to the butcher and the boss battle started, and it's mostly just dodging. So you are dodging the butcher's cleaver, and then he will occasionally smash his fist down on the ground, which creates like a shock wave that destabilizes Ole so he can get you with a follow-up attack. I didn't realize that because I was jumping around like mad anyways. So without really intending to, I had been dodging the shock wave. And then I finally didn't jump when he smashed down his fist one time and it destabilized me. And that cleaver came down and just did a real good chop on Ole.
Right in half.
And I was not prepared for both the sound effects and how terrible it would be.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
I mean, you kind of feel like they were sitting around in a team meeting over at old Dimfrost HQ, and they were just like, "Can't we?" They were like, "Boss, here's this kill animation." He's like, "That's cool. Make it bloodier."
A lot bloodier.
And that's one of the things, like, especially when we were wrapping up the last little bit and you were playing and fighting the final boss, it was an interesting thing that I even noticed because there's a point where the final boss swings at you with a sword, you jump over it, and then like he'll do an attack again where the sword comes back and you have to jump over it again. Well, it's reactive, and this is kind of a thing where I was like, this is a really cool gameplay feature that makes this very interesting. That it's not like, I feel like a lot of games, sometimes when you die, there's like the standard kill animation, death animation. I know some games like Resident Evil's, The Last of Us had some different ones too. But the cuts that would dismember and destroy Ole were reactive on his body to where he actually got
Yes.
hit. Like there was this one point where you jumped to try to miss the sword,
I was jumping,
got caught right in half.
and so I was in the air, and the cleaver still got me, and like Ole's two chunks of his body like hilariously
Yeah.
flew off screen.
And-
so on the one hand, it is terrible. On the other hand,
a
some of the
marvel.
deaths are pretty funny.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like, oh wow, they actually had to sit here and animate these different things or dismemberments for all these different possibilities of how you could
it's
get killed.
terrible.
It's terrible, but also hats off to you. That's thorough. That's
Really,
being
really
thorough.
harkens back to the days of Unreal Tournament 2 where you could turn down the gravity and turn up the gore so that when
Nice.
people exploded, their chunks would just kind of float away.
Oh
Very
man,
funny.
that's a good time right
Yeah,
there.
good stuff.
But so what was kind of like your overall, like again, it's not necessarily a difficult game.
No,
in terms
it's
of
not
gameplay.
difficult. So overall, I do think that, so part of the reason that I sort of thought, oh, okay, this is an indie game from 2018, is that the mechanical aspects of the game are incredibly simple.
Mm-hmm.
It really is just walk around with L, occasionally you have to hold L2 to aim the moonstone and then do R2 to throw it and or activate it, just depending on what the situation calls for. But other than that, and like the X button to interact with certain things, there's not a lot going on.
Yeah.
There were a tiny handful of what could be described as QuickTime events, and also QuickTime events in and of themselves feel very old school to me now. Like that harkens back to a bygone days of what's your favorite game? The Order 1886? That harkens back to a time when the PS5 was new.
That was PS4.
Yeah, when the PS4 was new. Oh God, you're right.
The Order was a launch game for PS4.
God. Okay, that's how old it is. So that's what it immediately reminded me of. So I definitely can't, sing the praises of the mechanical aspects of the game just because there's not much to say.
Yeah, it's
that's
very
not
simple.
to say that they were implemented poorly. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. So as far as like were there bugs or glitches? No, the game does exactly what it's designed to do. It's just that from a gameplay perspective, it is designed to do not a whole lot.
Right. The real I feel like pull of this game isn't so much the minute by minute gameplay of
It's
it as
not.
much as it is just getting fucking terrified.
Yeah, it's
by just how scary the environments and the art and the monsters that you're facing and seeing are.
Like sometimes you'll be just walking from one area to the next. This happened when I think during our second playthrough, and there was a deer in the background because you're like tiny and you can see things moving in the background. It's like, oh, nice, a deer. And then it rears up on its hind legs, and you see that it has like humanoid hands,
Like Leshy
and
or
it's like
Leshin or something.
looking at you, and you're like, "Oh God, get out of here!" Now it did wound up not being something that was a hazard,
Thank God.
but that's kind of how the game is always keeping you on your toes because you encounter these things, and you're like, "Friend or foe?" Because
And
at
most
least
of the time foe.
most of the time foe, except for the game's one good character. Well, that's not true. There's technically two. But in my heart, the game's one good character, Lemus.
Lemus, the rock
Our
giant.
friend Lemus. Yeah, I think he's just a regular, rock golem. They call him a golem.
yes.
Because he's not a troll. Trolls are the bad guys, air quotes. And then there is Lemus, just a nice little rock golem. You actually sort of, don't you have to get rid of creatures that are bothering him the
little
first
pine
time?
cone guys.
Yeah, you save him from the little pine cone dudes by just chucking your moonstone at him, which is hilarious. As they throw tiny spears at you, by the way.
Right? It's just not cool at all.
It's very not cool. But once you save Lemus, he becomes your friend, and he becomes your forever friend. And then later in the game, it's like, ah, yes, Ole as Lemus's only friend.
And you're just like, whoa, Lemus, you got to get out, man.
Lemus.
You got to go out and see the world, the forest a little bit or
Really
something.
makes you feel bad for Levis, but Levis rules. So you meet a couple of friends along the way. You eventually meet a little fairy girl named Tuva, who definitely saves you from certain death more than once. But mostly it is you navigating your way through different thematic horrors,
Yes.
which I gather from reading the bio on the wiki page that they are all loosely or very based in Nordic fables.
Right.
Now, to what extent is unclear, and most of those old fables, there's often not a lot to them in the first place. But for example, you have to fight the Troll Butcher first, and then you fight a much more interesting, at least to me, themed boss of Nakin.
Oh, yeah, Nakin was cool.
So you get to this part where you're reading these engravings on a wall of something probably in the future is going to try to enchant you with music, and then definitely try to kill you or eat you. And then eventually you get further in the stage and Ole starts to hear the demonic violin music. And even when it plays, it pulls Ole towards the source against his will. So there's clearly some dark magic going on there. And then you get to this, I was so stressed out this part. So you do get to this pond. And this is unique in that this is one of the, at least at the start, everything is sunny and bright.
Yeah.
A lot of the horrors are very dark and scary, and you know that horror is about to happen.
And it makes a point at one point where it's like, oh, Ole survived the night. So you very much know that the nighttime is when I need to be on my toes.
And then it becomes daytime. So you're like, okay, it must be safe, right? So you're going down these beautiful rolling hills, and eventually you get to a little pond. And again, sort of in the background, you see the source of somebody playing the violin. And he stops immediately when he sort of sees you out of the corner of his eye, and he just goes into the water.
It's
and you're like,
terrifying.
You're like, uh-oh, can't be
Oh,
good.
SpaghettiOs.
And then this is the part that stressed me out the most. You come across a little gnome that is riding a hedgehog. He has
So
like
cute.
a little saddle on him. It's like a little carriage. It's so cute. But you have to get on the hedgehog carriage because the hedgehog is going to swim across the pond to help get you to the other side. And I was so worried that that creature in the water was going to rear up and kill the hedgehog.
That would have been the worst of the
That
worst.
would have been the worst of the worst. Thank
If it
God,
happens,
everybody.
who knows, you know what I mean?
It didn't happen. I'm not even sure if there's a situation where it could have
I don't think so in that point.
Yeah.
I don't really think there's not with this game either like a whole lot of choice. There is, well, I will say that there is a part where you feel like you might be able to have some influence over the actions, but very quickly it is predetermined. Everything's going to be as terrible as you think it's going to be, and you just kind of have to like just roll with that
But
as the
this was
conclusion.
a rare time where that wasn't the case. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Like the game gives you just enough to sort of fake you out to make you think like, okay, maybe it's not going to be that bad.
Yeah.
Lemus wasn't bad. The hedgehog didn't die.
The pinecone guys weren't even
The
terrible.
pinecone guys weren't that bad, so maybe not everything is going to be bad.
Yeah.
And then Nakin like slops his gross demonic body out of the water and starts horror crawling towards you. It's
not a
Again,
good time.
he's big, you're small, and you have to like fight your way through the mud to get
terrible.
away from him. Oh, it's terrible. So that's like the flavor of everything that's going to happen is it's butcher flavored and Nakin flavored and many worse things to come. And a few of them genuinely got me.
Yeah.
Like there's that
Couple jump
creature
scares.
later on in the swamp that truly like, oh God,
Yeah.
like it got me.
Not a good time at all.
Not a good time.
I mean, it was a good time because it was an incredibly fun game to go through
best
and play.
bad time.
Yes, exactly. And, so the other stuff of this game is, we will leave some mystery.
the
if
imagination.
you did miss the streams and everything like that. So if you or were wanting to play it yourself, we won't go through every
It is
detail.
very short.
But yeah, like I said, 4.5 to 5 hours at max. But you keep going, and again, it like really pulls into that storybook theme and storybook feel of it because you will find storybooks like throughout the world that you read that kind of fill you in on what's going on in the world and why, why is there all this bramble everywhere? What
Yeah.
are all these, why is everything fucking terrible?
They give you backstory on the bosses that you
Exactly.
fought or are about to fight.
And kind of like why. See, like, for example, Nakin, the violinist in the pond, you discover from one of the storybooks was a human violinist in the nearby village. He was in love with a woman, and was it she didn't like? No, it wasn't that.
So the thing
What
is,
was it? It
he
was
was
like-
playing his violin, and people apparently just didn't like it.
Oh, that's right.
So
And they were
he
like,
got
"You
beat up.
suck," and he's like, "Fuck you," and like played the devil's music.
Not even that. They like beat him up. They like beat him up because he played the violin in a way that they didn't like, I
Yeah.
guess. So then in a fit of revenge, he starts to play demonic music and in the process kills like the entire village, including the one woman he loved.
because it like makes them dance until they just drop dead.
He didn't
basically.
mean to also get her, but he did. So when he realizes that he also killed her, he like goes into the swamp and becomes, like I assume a semi-immortal creature, but then he do die when Ole gets away from him. He gets smooshed on a big rock.
Tale as old as time. It's just like Anakin tried to save Padme, but wound up killing her.
Yep.
And then what did that do? Turned him into Darth Vader, and we all know how that story ends.
Indeed.
So basically, you're playing Star Wars. But anyway, Bramble the Mountain King was fantastic. I don't really the music to it was
music is
really
really
good. There
good.
is a wonderful treat that I will not spoil during the final boss of the music. And it was one of these things like while I was playing the game, and then even when I got to it and Mogan was playing, I was like, listen to the music. And she was like, no, the music's good at this part. But I was like, no, listen to the music. And it's like a wonderful
It's
cover.
a tune you'll recognize.
Yeah, a tune you'll recognize.
It is Beyonce's Texas Hold'em. It's not.
That would be incredible.
That would be super
But
funny.
I will leave that because it's just a super fun moment. And I was like, oh man, bringing in this song and how they incorporated it into the game. And they even like time up certain elements in the attack and in the boss fight to match up with the beat of the song and everything. I was like, this is really well done.
Yeah, it was well
so, but all in all, like, what'd you think? What was like kind of your overall just like takeaway? I know it's like scary as hell, but like,
Yeah, it's scary.
was it fun?
It was fun. I definitely felt very invested. Like as soon as that first boss fight happened, I was like, okay, got it. I'm on the same page as what the game, like, it is horrible and terrible, but it's horrible and terrible in kind of the fun way.
Right.
So you definitely feel very, very motivated to continue with the story, even though I didn't really care about saving Lillimore.
Because it's very clear from the beginning of the game, it's like she got herself into this
it's
mess.
like, that's a you problem, sis.
And it's kind of
that's
like...
not my problem. But anyways, it's just a short, sweet... this is like a really perfect day before / night of Halloween game.
Yeah, for sure.
This is the perfect Halloween weekend game, or like whatever lead up to that you've got. It is the ideal short, sweet, just a little snack of a game for that.
And like when I played it for the first time, I was like, oh man, this would be the perfect spooky season game. And then I was just like, I can't wait until spooky season for us to play it. I gotta like keep this fresh,
right now.
this momentum fresh, and really jump on it, because I thought the same thing. Like, very simple in terms of its gameplay. Story, though, in thematic elements is where it's at with
That's
this
the
game.
main reason to play.
And I thought, like, same thing, like, very fun time, enjoyed it, even though, like, I did legitimately kind of think when it first got, I was like, what's happening here? I don't know if this is for me. And then it very much quickly grabbed me, and I stuck through it till the end. And it's nice too, because like it does have chapters. Like after you beat a boss or whatever, like technically you're in a new chapter, and it does have a chapter select, so you can go back and redo things if you do want to do the trophy hunts and everything like that. But it's seamless. Like there's not the load screens. Well, I guess there are load screens. Sometimes like the flower comes up, but still like transitionary moment to transitionary moment flows very quickly and easily throughout. So also, you don't really ever like notice.
Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of never really registered a load screen because they were generally very fast.
Yeah.
So even when you get one, it's not like, the days of Tekken 7 on the PS4 where you're waiting for 40 years for the loading to happen. It's very fast.
Speaking of Tekken, Heihachi's coming back. Oh, yeah. We saw that at EVO 2024 last weekend. Heihachi's back, everyone. He's not dead. So that's exciting, but neither here nor there.
That has nothing to do with Bramble.
But like I said, like there's not much else really to say about the game. Like we said, it's short, so we can't really talk about things about it forever. But we would highly recommend that if you are looking for a quick, short, but very terrifying and very scary video game.
Graphic.
Very graphic
video game.
and violent video game. Check out, which is like, that's a weird thing to be like,
check it out.
These are great things we're talking about. But no, they are a fantastically well done package in Bramble the Mountain King. So go check it out. But with that, I think that's it. This might also set the record for like the shortest episode.
I think it might be, I don't know, 30 minutes?
37. Under
the
40 minutes.
Episode
I think this has got to be the
ever.
shortest. I mean,
let's stall.
Probably shortest video game. One of the shortest video games.
That's true.
Journey's probably shorter.
Yeah.
That's like, what, an hour and a half?
But actually, we've never done a formal Journey review just because the game came out before we started recording.
I did just play it within the last year, though, for the first time. So
maybe we can beat our shortness record here when you do your Journey review.
I don't know, though. The Journey, I mean...
Don't get into it. We have to get under 40 minutes.
Under 40 minutes. All right. We're in and out. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with us as we stream through those three sessions of playing Bramble the Mountain King.
And if you missed it, look for the VODs on the YouTube channel.
Yes, be putting those up on the YouTube, so you can go check those out there. If you have played Bramble the Mountain King and you're like, man, I disagree, or I agree, well, we would love to hear from you and hear what your thoughts about the game are as well. And you can do that by sending us an email at teamchatpodcast@gmail.com, following us wherever you listen to or watch the show, and join our Discord, talk about it with us there. But until next time, everybody, I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined to my right by Rachel Mogan.
Adios.
We will see you all next time.